Don't put your yield at risk, put your trust in proven solutions. Anvil Nitrogen Stabilizer, Super U Premium Fertilizer, and Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. These products offer higher active ingredient concentrations imitator brands can't match. See the difference at defendyourn.ca.
Well, I'm looking forward to this. We've had him on the show before, and really one of the big voices on current events, politics, everything that's happening in the province of Alberta. It is Ryan Jespersen of Real Talk. Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
Hey, Shaun, it's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Hey, how's the show going?
Yeah, I mean, gangbusters right now. Obviously, I think, like you said, we talk news, politics, and pop culture. So anytime that there's a federal election, let alone a new American president, let alone a full-blown trade war, you got a lot of eyes and ears on what we're doing. But I had a chance. Look at this, shamelessly name-dropping 30 seconds into
Wow.
my appearance on Real Agriculture. I'm name-dropping, but I was talking to Ian Hannamansing the other day, and I said,
Oh, cool.
Ian, this is what we wake up for. So it's been great.
Good stuff. So I guess, what have you been hearing from your audience about this election? We've things have really been turned around. We have a situation where it looked like it was, the Conservatives were, a 25-point lead. Mark Carney is chosen or elected as the Liberal leader, becomes Prime Minister. He all of a sudden is in the leadership position. It looks like it could be a majority government for the Liberals after all we've experienced the last 8 to 10 years. What are you hearing from your audience?
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the things I think that I really love about our audience and the type of show that we've built, Shaun, is that while we have largely a Western Canadian audience, we talk about it as kind of a podcast with a prairie lens. We do have real talkers, we call them, that join us either on our live stream or later from all across the country and from all across the political spectrum as well. And so we've got left-leaning progressives. We've got a lot of folks who I think, we describe them as centrists, or maybe we might even describe them this federal election as undecided or swing voters. And then, of course, we have ardent conservatives. And so depending on who you talk to, you'll get a very different assessment of the political landscape right now, like you're talking about, though. I mean, I'm guilty of it too, Shaun. Like, we put ourselves out there on our talk shows, and for the last 2 years, ever since he sold like 300,000 new memberships, doubling the membership of the Conservative Party of Canada, and fundraised way more than anybody probably thought was possible at that time. It's all been talk about the Prime Minister in waiting, Pierre Poilievre. And he had a very effective campaign against Justin Trudeau, who quite frankly sort of saw his legacy kind of start to campaign against himself. It was almost the same thing that happened with Stephen Harper back in 2015, not comparing the leadership styles, not comparing the policy, not even comparing where the economy was at when both leaders saw that sort of wavering of their support. But 10 years is a long time to be prime minister. 10 years is a long time to be at the top of the pile of anything, corporate leadership or otherwise. And so I think obviously Justin Trudeau was experiencing some real challenges to his leadership. And we were talking at one point to pundits who suspected that the Liberals could even lose official party status.
Yes. Yeah.
And they may have fewer than 12 seats in the House of Commons. In comes Mark Carney in an absolutely dominant performance in that leadership race. I'll try not to take too many off-ramps in our conversation here, but isn't it interesting? Pierre Poilievre sweeps to victory in the Conservative leadership. Mark Carney sweeps to victory in that Liberal leadership. Even Naheed Nenshi, for that matter, in the Alberta NDP leadership, sweeps to victory. The only one prominent or relevant in our conversations, really, that had to really gut it out or fight in the trenches for her leadership win was Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith. You'll remember when she won the United Conservative leadership over probably the favorite-ish Alberta's former finance minister, Travis Taves. It was a bit more of a nail-biter. But we've seen these big leadership wins. And I guess everybody wondered, with Mark Carney coming in with the credibility that he has. And again, you'll get different interpretations of that as well. I think for some folks, his greatest assets are in other folks' eyes, his greatest or biggest red flags. His time as a banker, his Ivy League education, his time as the governor of the Banks of England, the Bank of Canada, and that, his rubbing shoulders with the billionaire class, as we see the Conservatives attacking him on. But clearly, Carney was able to do something. I don't know if it was a Jedi mind trick or what, but as he sort of commandeered this change narrative, the former economic advisor to Trudeau, now kind of the face of the change so to speak, of the Liberal Party, enough so that, like you said, pollsters are giving the Liberals a real fighting chance of a majority government. I'm keeping my powder dry right now on predicting who the next Prime Minister of Canada is going to be. Shaun, we're less than 3 weeks out. We're about halfway through.
It's a long time, though.
Right now. And honestly, man, I don't know who's going to win. I said it on Real Talk a couple episodes ago. You could tell me Carney won, I wouldn't be surprised. You could tell me Poilievre won, I wouldn't be surprised. And it's not that I'm afraid to make a prediction. I just think that the two parties are so close, and for that matter, a lot of their policies are so close right now that I think a lot of Canadians are waiting to see what they see over the next couple of weeks before actually making a decision.
Yeah, because I'll say it. Carney has borrowed a lot of what Pierre was going to do, or said he was going. Stolen's
the word you're looking for.
Well, essentially stolen. It's kind of come down to a bit of a personality test, and that is that is a bit of a weakness. No matter what you think about Pierre Poilievre, his mark has always been he's that pit bull, he's that agitator, and at the time where we have President Trump, the Liberals have done a very good job of making those centrist or undecided Canadians sort of think, man, he kind of is a little bit Trumpy, even though he's really not. If you get into the policies, he's not that, in my opinion. But boy, he is marked with that, and that's hurting him.
Well, and who hurt him more than Alberta's Premier, Danielle Smith, going on a Breitbart podcast and saying that, Pierre Poilievre and his policies, most closely resemble or most closely align with the new direction of America, as Poilievre's campaign team is trying to convince 35 million Canadians that he does not align with the new direction of America. So I think that's been an interesting story to follow, maybe the liabilities within the conservative movement in Canada. But you're right. This is, and we talk about this all the time, whether it's, Albertans will go to the polls in the fall again to elect city and town councils across the province, and people will be asking in many of those circumstances, because we're probably going to see some turnover, maybe some significant turnover in the big cities, in Calgary and Edmonton, for example. But people will say, who comes across as most mayoral, right? They know that these cities are in economic trouble. Edmonton's in real economic trouble right now at the municipal level. Who comes across as mayoral? Who strikes you as most premier-like in a provincial election? And in this case, who comes across as most prime ministerial? And I think that one of Pierre Poilievre's biggest assets, he's a formidable debater. Probably nobody's better at the three-word campaigns than he is, right?
Yeah.
What is it? It's the formula: verb, the noun, right? Axe, the tax, or whatever it is. Defund the CBC. He's been able to sort of like out-slogan everybody else, but like you said, with an unpredictable and quite frankly incomparable U.S. president. Nobody's quite done global politics like Donald Trump is doing right now, and that's not necessarily a compliment. I don't think that even some conservatives, except for maybe the most ardent ones, believe that Pierre Poilievre can out-Trump Trump. And so I think that people are looking for, who's the statesperson that can sit at those tables and best represent Canada, and that's probably why Carney's been able to fight the Liberals back to where they are.
Well, some of the mainstream have made this big deal. I've heard a few political analysts say that, Poilievre's been held captive by the, as one person put it, the Maple MAGA, that, there's this, Trump-supporting group inside the Conservative Party that has not allowed Pierre to pivot. I don't see it that way. I actually just see it as pure stubbornness, that they've had a hard time pivoting. It was all about the carbon tax. It was all about Justin Trudeau. And all of a sudden, it wasn't about the carbon tax, and it wasn't about Trudeau. And they didn't move. They didn't pivot fast enough. I don't think it has anything to do with anybody that supports Poilievre that may also think Trump's a great leader.
Yeah, I don't know. Everybody's seen the photos, and I bet your audience and I bet my audience as well, Shaun, has differences of opinion on whether or not it was an asset or a liability for Pierre Poilievre to deliver donuts to the truckers during the Ottawa occupation or whatever.
Oh, no, that's hurt him. Oh, no. So full stop. That is hurt. In southwestern Ontario, eastern Ontario, that the convoy still lives in terms of how strongly he did or did not support it. 100%.
Haven't you noticed, though, when's the last time you heard Mark Carney bring that up? Or, when's the last time the Liberals have mentioned it? It's almost like they haven't had to, because it's just through the association of the bigger picture, right? Of like how, the Venn diagrams of how many of those. And listen, I'm not going to take anything away from many Canadians, especially during that time. Feels like an eternity ago, but COVID ravaged a lot of folks' bank accounts. It was taking its toll on a lot of people's communities and families, and still has to a certain degree. And I know a lot of people participated in that convoy as an example out of a sense of desperation. Yeah. And I think I've always wanted to be careful and gracious and empathetic and also candid when I look back and reflect and talk about that. But I do think that, with Pierre Poilievre in that circumstance, like he took a risk at the time, and I think it paid off because, in the short term, he was looking to build a movement, and maybe he was looking at influencers these days like Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson and how they've built these massive audiences, these almost disciples, and how have they done that? What have they tapped into? And Poilievre tapped into something. And now maybe some of those chickens have come home to roost, and maybe he's dealing with the consequences of that. But I haven't seen the Liberals rolling out those photos as much as I thought they would, because I think everybody kind of just knows that this isn't so much about anything other than Donald Trump. That's what this election's about.
David Kledoff, though, from Abacus, talks about how it is about President Trump, but it's not that. It also is about affordability. It's still a factor.
It has to be.
But if we're going to, if you're willing as a Canadian voter, in my opinion, to forgive the Liberals for multiple, and I mean multiple ethics violations, and some of the thing in the financial mismanagement, and there's a lot of things to be critical of them for. If you're willing to let all of that slide, I think it's okay to say Pierre. Like let the convoy, delivering donuts slide. Like, to me, those are in two different total camps. It's very interesting the way Canadians have reacted to this, and clearly, again, I think there's a bit of a cultural. And here, it feels like you're interviewing me here, but it's a little bit of a cultural thing where Canadians like nice, and Mark Carney just seems a little bit nicer right now than Pierre does, right or wrong. It's a fascinating election. And I'm fascinated by your show because, like you said, it is similar to ours, where we have people on all ends of the spectrum. People that love supply management, people that hate supply management, and everything, just on that issue alone, right? I'm looking forward to, on Thursday morning, I'm going to be on your program. So how do people check it out and make sure they can tune in?
Well, we're really looking forward to having you on there, and no pressure, Haney, but we've referred to you as the preeminent and strongest voice for Canadian agriculture on planet Earth.
Wow.
And so, people can check out RyanJespersen.com, Jespersen with 3 E's. They can find us on all the social platforms at Real Talk RJ, or search Real Talk Ryan Jespersen on YouTube or wherever they get their podcasts. We'll be live at 8:30 a.m. Mountain Time, 10:30 Eastern, or later on demand. And I'm looking forward to it as well, because, Shaun, you're 100% correct. While this is an election about Donald Trump, and while probably Donald Trump would qualify as the so-called ballot box question, right? We've seen elections in past. Jason Kenney let Albertans know in 2019, for example. That was an election about the carbon tax. That's what that one was, as Kenney presented it, and it proved to be so. And obviously the Conservatives swept to victory there. The ballot box question here has changed, and it has become Donald Trump. And I think that Pierre Poilievre and his team, as smart as they are, or as smart as they have proven and capable as they have proven themselves to be, they've been unable to see this new threat coming, and that is the threat of a resurgent Liberal Party that has, you're right, convinced Canadians to forget about many of the reasons. Like Shaun, if you looked at or talked to people about why they felt the way that they did about Justin Trudeau, and why his popularity was plummeting, was cratering, like it was, there were so many different reasons that people would present, but the Liberals were able to effectively, with this leadership contest, throw the baby and the bathwater out, because the baby was the biggest problem there, right? So out goes the bathwater, not to suggest that there's not a lot of that same old Liberal guard surrounding Mark Carney. It's a lot of the more familiar names. But I think that you haven't brought in a candidate that was kind of like if it was Chrystia Freeland, if it was Anita Anand, if it was Sean Fraser, if it was Jonathan Wilkinson, if it was any of the prominent Liberal cabinet ministers that people could draw direct lines to Justin Trudeau, then I don't think we'd be seeing this. And I think that's also why Carney won in resounding fashion. Off the top of my head, I think it was 86, 87% on the first ballot. I mean, he walloped the field. And yeah, sure, he was Trudeau's economic advisor, but he was also appointed governor of the Bank of Canada by Stephen Harper, and maybe he's been able to convince some people. Maybe having been born and raised in Edmonton has helped his cause on the prairies. I don't know. I don't think honestly that moves the needle that much. No. But I do think you make a very strong point in that there's been something about his campaign. And I do think a big part of it as well is the credibility that comes with his resume and his experience sitting around big negotiations, moving around billions of dollars, sitting in executive corner suites, having a job outside politics. That kind of stuff resonates with people when the number one thing they're thinking about is Canada going to be able to preserve trade agreements or to be able to get better deals with new export partners? And that's the top issue right now. You're bang on about affordability. Notice nobody, and I mean this respectfully, but nobody's talking about the environment this election. People aren't even talking about other issues. I mean, there's been some talk about housing because for millions of Canadians, that is their day-to-day concern.
100%.
John, if you can't find housing, or you can't afford housing, or you can't afford groceries because those costs are up and your housing costs are up, or if you've had to uninsure your car or sell your car because you can't afford to drive it anymore, your kids aren't playing soccer this summer, or you're not taking your family on vacation to the water slides because you can't not only pay for it, but also you can't afford the interest on the cost of borrowing if you were to put it on your credit card. That for some people, yeah, climate change is a thing, and we're all familiar with what happened in Jasper and Lytton, BC, and we've seen all the evidence. But for a lot of people, and your ag producers that listen to this show, you talk to them, they're very well aware of these types of the impact of climate change as well. But for a lot of people, the concern this election is today, tomorrow, and the next day.
Yeah. Same thing in the U.S. election. It showed. I care about climate change, but I need to be able to pay my bills. That's
right now, this Friday.
Exactly. Hey, Ryan, this has been fantastic. Really appreciate it. Everybody tune in to Real Talk on Thursday. Going to be joining Ryan on his show, and always has great discussion, great discourse from all the political sides of the spectrum. Ryan, thanks a lot for joining us here today on Real Ag Radio.
Thanks, Shaun. Great to see you.